3 keys to getting paid a buyer's agent commission. How are you ensuring that you get paid a commission when representing a buyer? I don't think anyone is expecting a flood of low commission listings, but what we are seeing is a slowly growing number. In some price points and areas, it is already approaching 5% of listings. Now 5% isn't a lot, but I expect that number will grow to 10 to 15% over the next few years. Again, not a huge number of listings, but that could be 1 in 10 transactions. So how can you ensure that you get paid a commission when working with a buyer and get paid all of what you are worth? The best practice for working with a buyer is to meet with the buyer before you go to show them properties. The process is quite simple and provides the opportunity to discuss the process with the buyer, to understand their wants and needs, and ultimately have the discussion about the buyer agency agreement. We all know that buyers require a lot of your time and expect you to be available to them to do searches, to help them find the right property, and then to guide them through the process of buying a home. The unfortunate mistake that many real estate agents make is that they don't get a buyer to sign a buyer agency agreement up front, and therefore there are times when we end up working for free. And then to compound that mistake, the buyer's agent did not discuss with the buyer the terms of the buyer agency contract. So then an agent shows a home where the commission being offered is less than 3%. And of course, that is the one that the buyer wants to buy. And guess what? You now have to get paid less than what you are worth for your services. Do you want to take the risk of not getting paid at all, or worse, to be the 1 in 10 transactions at 1%? So with that, there are key shifts in how you talk with buyers and how you make sure you get paid. The first is to remember that even if the seller was willing to pay 3%, if negotiated, if they only offer 1% on the MLS and you don't have a buyer's agency agreement, you don't even get the opportunity to negotiate. I'll say that again. Seller is willing to pay 3% if you ask, but without the buyer's agency agreement, you're not allowed to ask. So that's one item. You've got to get an agency agreement to even get the ask. Number 2, you've got to get an agency agreement where the buyer has already agreed to pay you the higher amount. If you want to negotiate for 2.5%, the buyers need to have agreed to pay you 2.5%. And in order for the buyer to want to pay you, you need to have been able to show them that you bring far more value than the cost of the 2.5%. You can't just put a buyer's agency agreement in front of them and expect them to sign it. The education process and consultation process will be essential for the buyer to understand your value and want to pay you for your services. Number 3, you need to be in in-depth conversation with your buyers about how commissions work, how the agency agreement works. Some buyers give pause if they just see an agreement and think they have to pay the entire thing. Having statistics to show them how many listings are actually lower commissions will help. Also, letting them know that there is usually something offered. It might only be 1% or 1.5%, but the buyer would only be responsible for the difference. Then highlighting that you'll also be negotiating for that difference before the buyer would have to pay it. It's only if there was a lower commission offered, which is not a majority of the time, and when you're not able to negotiate the difference, which will be even less of the time, that a buyer will need to bring money to the table. In all, if you focus on these 3 core concepts, you'll be able to ensure that you get paid for all the hard work you do as part of a transaction. Don't diminish your value, and don't be afraid to turn down clients that don't believe in your value that you bring to the transaction. Be confident in your value proposition, articulate it clearly to your buyers, and get an agency agreement to allow you to negotiate for a commission. If you do these things, you'll be well positioned in this transitioning industry.